Welcome to another episode of K-Wellness Diaries, the interview. I'm your host, Laura McLuckie from WellMi Wellness Solutions. And today I'm joined by someone who I absolutely admire, someone who is a force to be reckoned with in international wellness, and someone who I'm actually a little bit scared of. I would love you to give a warm welcome to Mindy Sisco. Mindy!
That's me.
Hi. So I've got some questions for you. I'm going to let you do all the talking. I'm very conscious I'm at school today, so I've got lots of noise and life around me, which is wonderful, but might be distracting. So let's just get into it. Why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Well, this is so great to be here and being able to kind of have our worlds of passion converge. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm always happy to, like I say, to put my face in your face. I am a yoga teacher. I have been in Korea for many, many years. I came first as an ESL teacher, and then maybe we'll talk about this later, but I kind of did the circuit of kindy jobs, and I kept getting fired. So I said, well, I gotta find another place to teach. So I've been teaching. I started teaching right after I did my training, and that's been going on almost 9 years, all in Korea. And then since starting the studio, I kind of pop in and out between here and then being from the States, spending a lot of time there, and then kind of having the opportunity to let this be my means of travel. So it's always been my inspiration, you know, when I'm looking at places, connecting with other studio owners, students around the world, when the shift from Korea takes people other places, it's a great way, an opportunity to visit them wherever they are. And so it's been such a beautiful common denominator for my life for the past almost 10 years.
Yeah, and it's really, your life is really the perfect definition of wellness travel, because you travel internationally for wellness experiences, of course, not just yoga. One of my favorite stories is you telling me about the plankton. Favorite story of your stories. But you've had various wellness experiences over the past, 8 years of being a teacher, but also not just being a teacher, but as a participant as well, and as a traveler, a wellness tourist, etc. So tell us about your wellness journey. What kind of things have you experienced in your journey, and what was it that brought you to yoga?
Well, I think that yoga, I started out, just like anybody else in their 20s, you get dragged by a friend, or there's, a really good deal and you're poor and it's a way to work out. And so it just, started like that. But I think that I became very, very serious. It was always in my mind to become a teacher. It's something about it yoga really resonated with me, and I would kind of go in and out of it. And so I spent 10 years with varying levels of commitment, and I had decided that I wanted to go to India to do my training. I wanted to have, I think there's this idea that it's an authentic experience, and that's, a conversation for another day, but it was a very powerful experience. And I was really lucky that you just do an internet search. You don't know what you're going in for. I found the cheapest program. I knew nothing about anything. And I got really lucky. I had a really good teacher. There were only 5 other students. Most of them I'm still connected with, and they have continued their careers with the world of yoga right now. Some people, again, shift in and out. There's a lot of different motivations. But so I started out my training in India, and from there I brought all of that love and that information back to Korea. And so that was a very interesting dynamic, trying to see where there was overlap between those two worlds, and then where there were some parts that were not so congruent. From there, I think that yoga for me was never rooted in being a job. It was just something that I think that the pandemic really clarified this for me. It was very much a fundamental part of my being. And so it wasn't that, okay, I got this piece of paper, I can go teach now. Because it wasn't about legality. It's not like a massage therapist or a nurse or other occupations where you need some sort of certification in order to be quote unquote qualified. In this world, you're really just as good as your lesson and your relationship with your students. And part of that is cultivating an ongoing relationship with yourself in the practice. So for me, I was really lucky to have met a bunch of people from other movement disciplines. My first training, I was training with these Venezuelan acrobats. So this was something way out of left field. I had no idea about acro yoga. And then all of these lights started going off, and there's a curiosity that gets piqued when you start to go down this path of exploration. So from there, I was exposed to acro yoga. Acro yoga brought me to Montreal. Montreal was, I can't say enough about acro yoga Montreal, about Jesse and Eugene, all the people that I met there, people from that community. I went there to develop my personal practice as an acro yogi, but then also to bring some skills as a teacher. From there was this whole, you have all these other modalities that are crossing over. Thai massage. I went to Thailand. There's an acro yoga that's specific to therapeutics. That's a hybrid of Thai massage and acro yoga. From there, you learn about water therapies, and it's just endless. The amount of creation that's happening in the movement world right now. It's really an amazing time to be in the wellness and the movement world.
And it's wonderful because we're able to be in the wellness and movement world like this, virtually. And one of the things that I love, I completely agree with you in terms of being very lucky to have a teacher. I was speaking with our good friend, Jen, who is also in my graduating class of yoga teachers. And so we both learned from you and Simon at Kaizen Korea. And one of the things that I love about taking your class, because I enroll in your class regularly, whether or not I can show up to all of the classes.
You do what you can when you can.
You do what you can when you can. But one of the things is I respond so well to the way that you teach, because it's very obvious that it's not for you about a job and a paycheck. It's not for you about getting to an achievement. It's not about getting to a point of it's not about putting your students where you want them to be. It's about giving your students the space, time, and the wisdom that you have in terms of body control, body awareness, mind awareness, to allow them to discover that for themselves. And so the reason I said at the beginning I'm kind of scared of you is because you can see in us when we have that energy that is able to push a little bit further, is able to go that extra mile, able to endure a little bit more discomfort when you're getting into the postures or getting into the places where you want to be. But then you also have this wonderful, tender awareness of when we need to just pull back and when we need to be quiet and when we need to just be where we are. And I think I've lost you on the video. No, there you are, you're back. And I think that's so lucky for me personally to have had you as a teacher, like to teach me how to teach other people, because I will take that with me into my sessions. And it's wonderful to be able to not only give that to my students, and I teach a lot of children these days, but also to have that for myself. And I think that's a really important gift that you get from your teachers. And I think that's a really, really special relationship. And that's what it's all about. It's about finding that path and allowing yourself the space to be intrigued and to move from place to place. And you as a teacher personally, you've done a lot of that for me in my practice and as a teacher now.
Well, you've mentioned the virtual space, and I think that has been such an interesting dimension to teaching in the timely circumstance that we find ourselves in. And not to pat myself on the back, but I think it just reinforces that principle that, you have to keep in mind this objective of creating a space of autonomy for whatever reason. I can't always be there.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if we believe that it is a personal practice, then it is my job to teach in a way that informs you towards that objective. So I think that there's details about like hands-on adjustments versus non-hands-on adjustment. Of course, those aren't possible in the virtual space. So it's important for me to be able to not only know how to see. This is my responsibility as a teacher, to know kind of how to read the room, but then also how am I using that to give successful, useful, meaningful feedback. And I think that is a skill. It doesn't matter where you apply it. If you're in a school, I mean, from my training, we work with a middle school teacher. She's not in the yoga world. She has hobbies. She's a runner, but it's not in the same circumstance that we're in. And it's these lessons that are so applicable in interpersonal communication. How are we rooting our communication in actually receiving the message that people are trying to send us, or maybe not actively, consciously sending us, but what messages are being sent? What am I receiving? How am I responding?
Having experienced it with you, I think, yeah, if you know how to do it, if you can do it well, if you can cultivate that skill for yourself and adapt to this online modality, I guess, then yeah, I think it's just as, or it can be just as powerful for the students as well.
Well, and I think that one of the overarching themes in my personal practice, in my philosophy as a teacher, is this idea of, it's not this mindset of positivity, like let's just look at every problem as an opportunity. But I think that there is learning to be done in every situation. And I think that sometimes it takes hitting those walls in order to really sit down and make time for that deconstruction. Like, how do I make this work? When I'm doing assessments and I'm trying to support students, this is all rooted in my experience personally of, my back hurts. What am I doing that is continuing to perpetuate this problem?
Yep.
Because when you're going to find solutions, and majority of the time, they're not there. There's not this easy on and off, answer to a lot of the things that we're struggling with on a small level in our daily lives, but then in the big questions that we ask ourselves. It takes time to sit with things. And if nothing else, it can be as obvious as an experience as sitting in a posture, 5 breaths, just grit your teeth and bear it and know that stress is part of life. The other thing is saying, okay, there's this ongoing pattern. Maybe I'm not going to deal with a toxic relationship, but I'm going to deal with something like, why does my knee keep hurting? And when you practice problem solving, that's a skill and that's a muscle, just like everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more. And I love your expression, pain is not acceptable, but pressure or discomfort, that's okay. And we need to move into our discomfort. And I think a lot of the times we avoid it until it's unavoidable, and then we just seek medical attention. So moving into our discomfort allows us to be with it, to be aware of it, and to move through it and past it progressively, proactively. And I think that's really important. Okay, I'm very conscious of the time here. Let me move to my next question. What does Kaizen mean? Because you're one half of the company, Kaizen Korea. So what does Kaizen mean, and how did it all come about?
Kaizen is, it comes from Toyota. I had heard about this on a radio report. Toyota kind of revolutionized the business world in the 80s in this idea that, and apologies if this is like a very, very bro-science-y way of explaining it, but my understanding of it is that everybody contributes to the continuous improvement of, for them, it was the cars and the production line and how do we continue to make a better product. So it's kind of gotten boiled down to this catchphrase of continuous improvement. But in the business example of Toyota, it also set this egalitarian mindset that anybody could stop the line. So if you're somebody, that's cleaning the floors and you walk by and you say, this, if we just made this little alteration to something in how this was put together, this could be a better process. You could totally shut down the line. And you, in that moment, your ideas were going to be heard the same as the CEO of the company. And I just thought that was such a powerful idea. And I think that, in the yoga world, there's different traditions, there's different lineages, and they have earned their reputations, but also there is so much information in the ether and so much experimentation and so much to continuously learn. I think that it was really important to acknowledge that it's not just top down, that it's everybody is contributing. So the students are just as much of this process as I am as a teacher, and there's this fluidity and this exchange back and forth. And then just generally, this idea that nothing is static, and not improvement in the sense of, improvement in the sense of feeling better, living better, moving better, and just having a general better relationship with yourself. It doesn't have this end point. It's about this ongoing process, this open-ended idea.
I love that. And so you got that name, but Kaizen Korea, when did you, because this is your business, and you're a moving business, but you're based in Korea. So when did you start Kaizen, and why did you start Kaizen?
So I first met Simon, I want to say back in 2000, a million years ago. Feels like a million years ago. He was running an MMA gym, and at the time I had been training MMA. It's not totally separate, but so that was my physical training at the time, and I came to him as a coach. And we just started collaborating because he had a lot of English speaking students, and so it just made sense that I would come in and support him and what he was doing. And from there, I became more interested in yoga. And so it would have been in 2012. So I was supporting him through all of this as a fight gym, and then just as a kind of like calisthenics. He was in a space of exploration too, in kettlebells and calisthenics, body weight training, this type of thing, and moving kind of away from the mixed martial arts specific training. Then I went to go get my yoga certification. I started doing classes right away. So I went from kind of back of house to front of house. And he came to yoga as my student. And so from there, he was still doing a lot of calisthenics and bodyweight training. And even now, his classes are a hybrid of, a lot of what we do is just hybrid movement and hybrid modalities. It's not a specific, it doesn't follow one specific name. Except it falls under a specific name now. It's Kaizen Yoga. We made it. We brought it all together, and this is what we call it now. So after that, he came into yoga. He got really, really interested. And then again, just, the tide was kind of moving that way. And so that's been our incarnation, since 2012. We've been a yoga-oriented studio.
Yeah. And obviously there's classes online. You do classes all around the world. But you do spend a lot of time in Korea teaching people how to teach. The teacher trainings are a yearly occurrence. So my question is kind of more about Korea in terms of what Korea offers the wellness seeker, or, the other places don't necessarily offer. What is unique or what is attractive about Korea?
I feel it feels like dumb luck that I, was here, and I happened to, this was the place that I started my teaching career. Korea is unbelievably unique in I don't want to say the quality of students, not that they're better studiers or worse studiers, but this respect and this willingness to invest in learning. There's a culture of that in Korea.
Yeah.
Unlike really anywhere else in the world. I think that when people are I hear this in the West, should I do a teacher training? Should I not do a teacher training? And Korea, if you are into yoga, you just keep training. And not just yoga. If you do anything, you keep training. If you and you know, as part of the culture, when you become an empty nester, that's kind of when things start. You're okay. I'm going to learn to ride a bike at 42. Okay, I'm going to learn to rock climb at 42. And so you have this culture of older people getting back into movement, getting back into hiking, getting back into a personal relationship with movement that maybe kind of took a back seat while they were a householder. Whereas I think that tends to be more niche when I'm in the States. It's like you have yoga people, whereas here it's somebody who just has an interest. They're going to go for it. And I think that is, I feel very lucky that that's the culture here. I feel very lucky that I'm the benefit of that attitude towards continuous improvement, towards continuous learning, continuous training, and just continued curiosity.
I think it's such an astute observation, because it's absolutely, the investment in education, but not just in education, the investment in continued development of self is really, really important here. And I would agree with you. I mean, to be fair, I've been in Korea nonstop for the past 10 years. So I'm unlike you, I've not lived and taught and trained in other places. But you can feel exactly what you're saying. You can feel that through all kind of spectrums, whether you are one of the yoga people or whether you are looking to do something new. People will just throw themselves into that new hobby, and it's almost like a never-ending thing. People are just like, people don't stop work and then think, okay, well, that's me then, I'm just going to sit down and watch TV. People are out all the time, doing, busy. And I think it's a very infectious atmosphere as well. It just makes you want to do it as well. It's a very fun place to be.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the examples of that I felt was this sense of possibility when I first moved here. And I thought that was just being young, and I was in my early 20s, and this is just what you do. I mean, I had like more disposable income than I would have back home. Definitely more vacation. That's a different conversation. But I just had like a pretty good quality of life here. But I realized looking back now that was reflective of the population at large. When you're here on the weekends, you go hiking on a mountain, you're not alone. There are groups of people that are out doing stuff. And when you see that, you absorb that energy, and also that feeds into the businesses that are able to offer those types of activities and types of those types of activities and those types of communities that grow out of those activities.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% integrated into the culture already, so much so that even the wellness activities are not really seen as wellness activities. It's just day-to-day life. You go for a hike, that's normal, but you can put that into wellness. You can put that into wellness tourism. You can, label it whatever you want, but it's just so integrated into Korean culture here. So you have been in like you said, you started the studio 2012. You've been in the wellness business as a teacher for a long time, 8 years, 9 years. And so what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced while you're working in the field of wellness or yoga or movement? What are some of the challenges?
I think that, when you talk about being motivated by passion, I think that's the only option, because it's not a thing that you get rich on. So, it's in terms of the hardest thing for me is leading with integrity and continuing to stay focused on what it is that I want to share and letting it be as pure of a message as it can be. I think that when I talk about this with students, there's a lot of different ways that you can go forward in this world, in this small yoga world. One of the things that is really hard for me is the diet culture of it. And there is a lot of misconception that there's a lot of questions like, if I do yoga, will I lose weight? If I do this, and there's a lot of places that promote that. I don't want to have to do that. And so it's been the sacrifice of, okay, am I going to keep this message and keep this philosophy, have less students, and have a smaller operation? And so that's been a conscious choice forever.
That's something that we spoke with Jen and Danielle and myself spoke about previously, about like my first experience of yoga classes in Korea was very much goal oriented. It was like, you must get into this position, you must push your legs wider. And I had one military style yoga teacher, and she was about 65, and she was wonderful. And it was like the way she spoke, 하나 둘 셋 넷 하나 둘, and I was just like mesmerized, and my legs were going up and down. And but then I realized, like, she would come over and she would push my back, and being very flexible and doing yoga anyway, I kind of liked it personally, because I thought, okay, yeah, push me into this. However, if I was in a space where I was not comfortable with my body, I was worried about XYZ, just basically anyone that isn't ready for being pushed to the floor by, your military general teacher, I thought, this is a terrible way to teach. And personally, for me, yes, even though I kind of liked it, maybe on a different day I would have hated it. On a different day where I was feeling not up for that, I would have hated it. And I think there's so much ego in yoga. There's so much pressure, especially with SNS, with all that kind of stuff. We are fed a constant stream of what should be, as opposed to what can be, or what might be, or what you just, take away the word should. Anything else, what you are interested in, where your journey is leading you. And yeah, and I think that's definitely difficult to do these days, because a lot of people are doing it for a goal, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If your goal is to lose weight and you do that through yoga, that's great. But I completely hear what you're saying. What is the message that you want to send, and where does your integrity meter lie in terms of how you're going to move forward in marketing yourself? Because at the end of the day, you are a business,
right?
But you've got to find that very personal moral compass in terms of how willing you are to compromise on your own beliefs and your own values, as opposed to how you're going to make a living.
Yeah, I was taking this class with a friend that's talking about modern yoga, and there's this whole part that's just, what do we mean when we say modern yoga? And I have to constantly stop myself from saying that's not yoga because, and it's like, at the end of the day, who cares what I think is yoga or not yoga? I practice the way that I think is right. I teach in the way that I think is right. I'm not out here to, stop all the atrocities that are going on in this world, that world, or the other. I just have to live right and know that that's the energy that I'm putting out, and that's all I can be accountable for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to ask one final question and leave the floor open for you, because I'm looking at the time now. What about any favorite lessons or favorite teachers in your experience? Anything that you'd like to share?
I just think that I was so lucky to meet Jesse and Eugene from Akara Yoga Montreal. I just have the deepest love for them. They, I think that they lead with integrity. They showed me that that was possible, and that you can be successful. You can live without price gouging. You can have a practice that you believe in. You can do things that are creative, and they just have been such an inspiration for me. And I thought, after I had trained with them, there was kind of like this parental discipline. Oh, I don't practice acro, and I should. Oh, I should do acro. I should be getting better. I should. And I realized those weren't the lessons that I was taking from them. It was about living with purpose and intent, and teaching with integrity and care, and having boundaries, and communicating what you need, and putting good stuff, giving the good juju out into the world. And that's what they do with every batch of students. And that's the imprint that they've left on my heart. And anybody, I just really, really encourage you. If you want to get inspired, if you're not into yoga, just look up Acro Yoga Montreal, their videos online. They're in their 60s. They're still creating, which is so amazing and so beautiful to me that this isn't a finite practice. And it's not one that's rooted in but it's not about putting together a show. It's they move because it's in them to move. And even if yoga is not that thing for a person, there is that thing. And so just, massage it a little bit. Give it some space, give it some love. And again, take the should out of it, because that's the thing that kills it. That's the thing that suffocates that light.
Absolutely. I love it. Do you have any final things that you would like to say to anyone watching, or to me?
Well, what should I say? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm limiting my exposure to people, so always happy to be exposed to this little gem. Happy to have people join me in class. One of the things is I think that people can be very scared about trying something new. I'm not saying that they're necessarily wrong, depending on who you end up working with, but if there is an impetus in you that you are a little yoga curious, I would love to take you into this world, take you into this space. And again, it's about meeting you where you are. And even if it's not with me, that's the should. That's the one should I'm going to put out there. That should be happening. It's not about you being in the yoga world. It's about the yoga world meeting you where you are. So if you have an injury, you can still do yoga. If you have, fear of having moved in a long time, that's something that holds a lot of people. Oh, I haven't exercised in a couple of years, or, oh, I've got this, that, or the other thing. You need it more than ever. So find a supportive teacher, a supportive community, and know that if it's the right place for you, it's going to resonate with you. And don't be afraid to ask questions and to just try. Just try. That's it. Just see what happens.
Give it a little try. My favorite thing that I hate to hear people say is, I want to try yoga, but I need to get more flexible first. I'm like,
let me just say this, Laura. After I had gotten my ACL repaired, I'm like coming out of like a morphine coma, and I'm trying to move. It was like Kill Bill. I was trying to move my toes, and I was doing yoga in my hospital bed. And I wasn't fancy. I wasn't breaking out in a Warrior II. Just mindful, purposeful movement. And on its best day, that's what yoga should be.
Absolutely. Mindy, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you or about Kaizen Korea?
Kaizen Korea across the board. That's our website. That's our Instagram. You can search it on Google. There's links. There's a lot of Korean information on Naver. And if you want to be our cacao friends, we'd love to be cacao friends with you. Yay! So across the board, Kaizen Korea.
Kaizen.
Yes.
Just FYI. All right. I will love you and leave you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Namaste to you, my darling. Thank you for exposing yourself to me today.
It was so lovely. Thank you so much, Laura.
I'll see you in class very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.